This is At Home with ADTS, a monthly program that presents topics that may be of interest to older adults and their caregivers, as well as talking about the services offered by Aging, Disability, and Transit Services of Rockingham County.
Hi everyone, welcome to the February edition of At Home with ADTS, a monthly program brought to you by Aging, Disability, and Transit Services of Rockingham County. I'm Cathy Powers, the Executive Director here at ADTS, and joining me as my co-host is Asheley Cooper, our Community Outreach and Development Director, as well as our special guest today, Cara Townsend, who is the Partnership Specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. Before we start our show today, we like to start by thanking all of the local businesses that have supported us over the past year through our Community Partners program. As the aging population continues to grow in our community, we rely on our community for their support to meet the ever-increasing needs. So we always like to say thank you to the Community Partners. Thank you to Carolina Apothecary, Pelham Transportation, Home Trust Bank, Wells Fargo, CJ Medical, Sparks Oil, the Rockingham County Community Foundation, Rockingham County Arts Council, Woodmont United Methodist Church, Eden Rotary, Colonial Funeral Home, Church of the Epiphany, JDK Automotive, Wilkerson Funeral Home, Annie Penn Hospital, Mohawk Foundation, Reedsville Rotary, and Plaza Mini Storage. We also want to give a special thank you to United Way of Rockingham County for their longtime and generous support of our Meals on Wheels program. United Way of Rockingham County brings together local people to raise local dollars to meet local needs. We thank everyone who's already participated in this year's campaign and encourage you to participate if you haven't already done so. So now we're going to turn our focus to today's guest. Thank you for joining us, Cara. So just to start, will you tell us a little bit about you and your role with the Census Bureau?
Sure. Well, thank you first for having me and for caring about your county. It means a lot to us and to all the citizens here. So my background is government affairs. I've been involved in policy and advocacy for most of my career, all of my career. And I feel very blessed to be working for the Census Bureau because it has educated me on some of the holes that are happening in our triad region. And so I'm happy to be here to talk about that.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us. So we're going to talk about the census. What is the census?
So the census was created in 1790, right around the time when George Washington became our first president and at the time of our first Congress. Back then, about 3.9 million people were counted, and now it's well over 330 million. Wow. So quite a change there, but it's still an important piece of our history, and mostly because it's about power and money. So the money being that the federal government allocates $675 billion each year to the states. North Carolina receives about $16 billion of that. But the funding is based on the count and not the need. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's important for everyone to respond. And the power piece, the census also controls the reapportionment for Congress. Mm-hmm. So in the last census, this decennial census in 2010, we as a state were 2,000 counts short of receiving a congressional seat. So we are slated to receive a new congressional seat, if not two, depending on our count.
Okay, so that's good for people to know. We're not just counting people because it's fun and we want to know. We're just curious how many people are out there. It's actually tied directly to resources.
Yes.
And representation.
Yes.
So it's very important that Rockingham County and all of the other counties are fairly represented and appropriately counted.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what the census looks like, what kind of questions are asked.
Sure. Well, the census, you'll get 5 types of communication throughout starting now and I believe in the end of May. Mm-hmm. So you'll get 2 invitation letters, and then the most important thing to look out for is the postcard, which you'll receive probably at the end of March. It's important because this is the first time ever that the census is electronic, mostly electronic. So on that postcard, you will have a barcode that's specific to your household. And you'll be able to respond by scanning that with your smart device or there's a number you can call to fill out the census that way over the phone, or you can request a paper form. So after that, if you don't fill it out, we'll send you 2 more communications, and if we still don't hear from you, we'll come to your house.
Okay.
So,
So what kind of questions does it ask? Or is it personal?
The census is always, we're always doing surveys year round. This one is about 10 questions.
Okay.
So we ask, who's in your house, how old is everyone, income data. We want to know if you have students in college, and also we want to know your race and ethnicity. And it is important to specify that, because how the form reads is for example, if you're white, that could mean you're from European descent or Middle Eastern descent. So we know who's here. It's important, there's a line right under that to really specify, so we can address those resources as needed.
So what happens to the information after someone responds to the census? How do they know that their information is safe and not being used in some nefarious way?
Sure. Well, that's a big question right now with the census. So it is confidential. We only collect household data. We don't collect personal data.
Okay.
And everyone can rest assured that we would never share information with other agencies like Homeland Security. It's much more beneficial for families to respond accurately than to not respond, because we want to know who's here. And how it works is wherever you are on April 1st, 2020 is where you're counted. So whether you're in college, if you're in a nursing facility, or even a prison, wherever people are on that date is where they're counted. And so we want to make sure we capture all those people in Rockingham County.
Sure, absolutely. So since it is online now, how is that information being protected? I know that's a big concern for a lot of people.
Well, we are on it. The census, I didn't know this before I started, but it houses a lot of data that you wouldn't think of. It houses all the export-import data for all of our businesses who do business globally. So we have a lot of protections. I joke around that every time I log on to my computer, it's almost like an iris scanner to get in, so because of the security. So
That's wonderful. And I read somewhere that if you are visited by the individuals, like you don't actually go through the process, that they're held really accountable for that information to protect it as well. I think sometimes people are nervous maybe about sharing information that way.
Oh yes, we are sworn to secrecy for life when we work for the census. So you would, if I did divulge any information, I would be either A, wearing an orange jumpsuit, or B, fined $250,000, which neither of those sound good to me.
Most definitely not.
So who's required to respond?
Everyone, regardless if you're a citizen or not, we count everyone. So we count migrant farm workers, we count students, any immigrants, refugees. We're really focusing on those populations as well to understand what their needs are as newly coming to this country.
And so I know it can be challenging for parents. So young ones, is that I read somewhere that's a population that you guys are targeting?
It is. Well. In 2010, we were 1 million short in counting children. And so that, as you can imagine, that can have devastating effects on transportation, on schools, on housing, and all kinds of things. So we think that happened because a lot of grandparents are raising grandchildren. And a lot of multifamilies living in the same house, they don't think they should count all the children. So it's very important to be counted as children. And we actually are partnering with the schools March 2nd through the 6th. It's called Statistics in Schools, and we call it SIS. So we're asking for all the schools in that week to participate and do some kind of census activity. That week, because we really rely on the children to educate their parents.
Yeah.
Sure, and as you mentioned, grandparents are raising grandchildren. We actually have a program here at ADTS that focuses on that group, and so it's really important to let them know that they still count, like you said, wherever they are, April 1st.
Absolutely.
So that also leads me to the other side of that, which is people in nursing homes. So how are y'all going to approach those individuals, make sure they're counted?
Well, for anyone living in a residential situation like that, we have people count them. They aren't necessarily counted individually. So if it's any kind of a residential facility like a prison or a hospital, nursing facility, or a college dorm, they all get counted under what we call group quarters.
Okay, interesting.
So let's talk a little bit about older adults, because obviously
Yes.
that's where our focus is at ADTS. And I know that historically, the population of older adults have been well counted. I mean, one of the well-represented groups in the census, because they're historically civically engaged and participate in those kind of things. The census is going to be a little bit different with the collection process this year, and I know that there's some apprehension that
Yes.
maybe we won't be able to reach older adults. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the one bonus, like you mentioned, is that older adults are civically minded. And I think that's important because they know that the census is very valuable to our government funding. It is important for senior citizens to just really look for that postcard, and any organizations in Rockingham County that would like to provide space for us to come and bring our census takers to help older adults would be great. Because we have the staff, the resources, we'll bring iPads and computers to help people fill it out that way. One thing I'd like to mention is attempted fraud, because it's the first year that the census is electronic. Someone will try to capture information, sensitive information. The census will never call anyone and ask for their social security number, their PIN to their bank account. So the only option is actually calling the census.
Right.
So that's something important for folks to remember. Also, when census workers come to your door, they are well identified. They will have a bag, they will have a badge, they will have either a computer or a laptop, but you'll definitely know they work for the census.
So even though the collection will be moving to online as a primary source of collection, it's not exclusively the only way that
No.
people can be counted.
Yes, when you receive that card, and even if you miss it, we'll have an 800 number that you can call and fill it out, or you can request a paper form. And I know that there are some rural areas in Rockingham County, and some of those areas will automatically receive a paper form.
Okay.
And they can reply either electronically or through that form.
So are there any current initiatives to work with the senior centers to come out and do certain things, like to do the census on April 1st?
Yes. I was actually just at 2 of your senior centers yesterday.
Oh, great.
But we're just really educating seniors, just talking about the changes. And yes, we are hopeful to be in as many senior centers as we can. But we do need that feedback back from the community that we're allowed to come. So we just need to know a date and a time that would be good for census takers to be there, and we'll arrange it.
Wonderful. I do want to talk a little bit, I don't know if you can expand on it, about how the funding is impacted and why that is so important that everyone be counted. Like what exactly, when you talk about funding, I don't think people really understand exactly what that impacts.
Yes. Well, it's pretty much everything. Specifically with seniors, Meals on Wheels. I know that there usually is a waiting list. I mean, in most of the counties in North Carolina. So that's the first thing I think about. Transportation, adult daycare, any kind of government matching program will be impacted by it, including transportation, health services. So pretty much anything, any government program you touch will be impacted by the census. And the thing to remember is that whatever count you get is what you have for the next 10 years. So if you're short, you have to wait a decade.
Right. I know a lot of different states are making this a priority. Has North Carolina set aside some funding to be able to do this? Obviously, you're here to help promote that knowledge. Is North Carolina also doing that as well?
Well, we do not have any state funding.
Okay.
So counties are kind of taking it on themselves. So the counties I like to show an example for are the bigger counties, but that shows you the priorities. So Wake County is spending $400,000 on the census. They're hiring their own person and doing a professional media campaign. Mecklenburg is also doing the same thing, and they're spending about that same amount. So, but you can be creative. You know, that the smaller counties aren't going to be left out, and I encourage the smaller counties to work with your colleges to possibly, you know, work with younger people to launch a media campaign. They're great at that at Facebook. We can get out the word that way. So I would encourage everyone to do that here.
Yeah. Well, and I know that the city of Reidsville has taken some pretty big steps. There's a big billboard up, and they're really pushing that an initiative.
That's great.
To kind of take the lead for our county and get the word out there. So we're really excited to be a part of that. And of course, we wanted you to join us today because we know that the changes are potentially going to impact older adults, and it is really important as the Meals on Wheels and transportation and adult day health provider in the county. Obviously, we have waiting lists for most of those services, and the needs are only continuing to grow. So we want to make sure that we get a fair representation of our count and get the maximum money and representation that we can get for our area.
It's important. I mean, I can tell you that South Carolina, they spent $1 million in the last census because they wanted a congressional seat, and they did get it. So that does matter, but word of mouth is just as powerful. Telling 10 of your friends, you know, about the census and it's coming is important. And we are also still hiring. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be hiring people across the state. We have 3,500 more people to hire.
Wow.
And these are great jobs. I think particularly in this county, it's $16 an hour and great benefits. And the great thing about this is that if you do get a job with the federal government, you have to, you know, you have to have a huge background check. And the great thing about that is that it's easy to move over to other positions in the government after this position ends.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the workers, so hiring, so they would actually come here to Rockingham County, and so you know they know this place and are comfortable with it and know the ins and outs. So that's who you're actually also hiring for, is actually local people.
Local people.
Oh, yeah. We want people to know their neighborhoods. That's really important. And know those hard to reach areas. So we really try to work with trusted leaders in the community. Whether that be at the churches or the schools or the government, anyone who, you know, works with different groups of people, and like you work with the aging community, so you're experts on reaching that population. So I really commend you.
And how does somebody go about finding to connect with a job?
Yes. Well, there are two ways. You can either go on usajobs.gov or censusjobs.gov. The usajobs.gov website has more of the salary jobs and maybe more supervisor positions, but I would encourage everyone to apply, and it seems like they're hiring people pretty fast.
Wonderful.
And there's also 1-855-JOB-2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you,
So,
Cathy.
additional information, you can reach out to any of those outlets. Cara, if someone here locally wanted to talk to you or figure out how they can get involved, if a senior center or a church or some other group wants to get involved and help spread the word in the county and kind of take a lead on that, how would they get in touch with you or go about doing that?
Sure. They can either call me or on my email. My email is Cara, Cara .Townsend, TOWNSEND, at 2020census.gov.
Wonderful.
Anything else? Anything we need to share?
I think that's all I can think of right
I think
now.
that covers it. Lots of good opportunity, and I really just want people to spread the word and know that this is a important event coming up. They'll start to get information in March.
Yes.
And then April 1 is the count.
April 1 is the count, and then I believe everyone has until the end of July to respond.
Okay. Awesome.
But if you don't respond by, June, we'll definitely be knocking on your door by that time, just FYI.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very
Cara.
much for
I did
having
want to
me.
mention really quickly that just a reminder to everyone that the month of March is when we conduct March for Meals, our annual campaign to raise awareness and funds for Meals on Wheels and congregate nutrition programs for older adults. So throughout the month, we are going to have local businesses and restaurants restaurants participating through both the Buy a Wheel campaign as well as Eat Out, Help Out, where they are donating a portion of their proceeds from a selected day to benefit senior nutrition programs. So thank you to all of the businesses that have already signed up. We're probably 60, 70 businesses already. Visit us on our Facebook page or on our website at adtsrc.org, and you can get the up-to-date list of all of the businesses that are participating. Please go in, support the businesses, thank them for supporting older adults and services to homebound seniors. And that is it for today. We hope you can join us next month when we are going to talk about board leadership for nonprofit organizations such as ours and why that's important, as well as discuss opportunities for board leadership here at ADTS. We'll be joined by 2 of our current board members, so we look forward to seeing you then, and thank you again.